So here we go, and you can see my screen, right? Okay, so yesterday we went through one of the most important concept of JavaScript, the inheritance, or specifically the prototype inheritance. So we talked about how to create objects. Of course, there is another way, which is using new, or if you want to give definition or structure to your object yourself, then of course you can create, or you can use function actually, and then use new, and then of course using the new keyword you will be able to create an instance of your particular structure. And of course remember that this is not a function call, this is a new instance creation. Okay, so in that case this is behaving like a constructor. And then of course you can check all this type of or instance of operator to figure out whether the object that you are having via this function constructor is really an object or not. So you can do that, and then of course we figured out, or we started from the scratch talking about how to put functions on the parent object and figure out whether your instance can access it. So of course it cannot. So what about overriding here in this case if they are not on the prototype? You see none of them are on the prototype, so of course this is not the overriding because these are two independent functions. So of course there is nothing, or not the concept of overriding. They are not even, this guy is not even visible here, so how can it be overriding? And then what about the inheritance? So we talked about if you put something or any property put on the prototype only gets inherited. So otherwise all others are kind of static to this object, but if you put some property on the prototype, then only it can be inherited and be visible to the instances. So that's how you can do that, and this is called the prototype inheritance. Now then we started talking about what about the dynamism. Why do we even call it dynamic language, the JavaScript? So of course the meaning is once you, so I mean you can change the prototype of your object at any time. So you don't have to do it before instance creation, you can do it anytime in the application execution. And then all the objects which were even created before the change in the prototype, they will also get the update. So this is how the dynamism of JavaScript works. Then we talked about difference between this versus prototype. So if you do this, then of course you are, or whoever is calling it is getting or whatever the instance that you are trying to create using my object in this example will get true copy or copy of these properties, not the inheritance. But to provide inheritance or inherited methods or something like that, then you have to put those properties on the prototype of the base class or base object, and then only your instances can inherit this properties or function in this case. So this is the difference between this and prototype. Then we talked about, okay, since we know how to modify the prototype, can we modify the prototype of the existing object? So yes, you can, although you are not supposed to, unless you are trying to do some polyfill thing where, for example, array.indexOf is available on the browsers more than IE9 or higher. If you need that in IE8, then of course you need to put polyfill for filter, for index of in the array, and so many things. So for that, polyfills are always mostly available on Mozilla Developer Network. You can get it from there. They have the best polyfills. So you can use in your JavaScript as well. You can just load that file just before everything, and then you will be able to provide unimplemented methods in the older browsers as well. So that's what you will be able to do if you use prototype. But again, there is a caveat. If you do something like that, then of course we talked in the last about a for loop. So you have to be prepared about those issues in the for loops as well. But anyways, if you require polyfill, then I would suggest, yep, you can put that, but you just don't put anything on the existing prototype. If you are just trying to play something or additional method, you don't need it. And then about then we talked about multi-level inheritance. I haven't seen any requirement of having multi-level inheritance in case of JavaScript, but just because we are coming from Java, we like to play with all type of inheritance in this case. So that's why there is a multi-level inheritance as well, which it can support, but of course you have to understand what we are doing here. So of course object.create is important thing, and again it is not available in IE8 or below. So That's why. Then of course we talked about how to iterate over array and object, and since now we are able to change or understand the meaning of prototype, this guy will screw your application if you don't understand how it will behave or how it will loop on the properties of your own object. Plus it will also loop on the properties that you or your application has put on the prototype in a custom way. So yep, that's why you should be aware of this. And then how to avoid that? Well, just use has own property, which is just to make a check whether this particular property is defined on this object only, not on its prototype. So you can make that check just by using has own property, and then of course it is on the object, and you pass the key that you want to check against, and in that case go or perform your operation only if this is true. Otherwise just get out from here or go to the next one. Then the same thing in case of array as well, but mostly I won't suggest you to use even var index array. I mean, there is no benefit of using this one, so you can always go on the array.length loop, because the length one is defined using this in case of JavaScript implementation. So of course every array has its own length. It's not on the prototype, so we are always safe. Okay, so any doubt until now? Rather, if you don't have anything, then we can start talking about DOM manipulation, which is kind of less interesting, more boring, but still. So let's talk about the window object then. So what is the window object? So it is the global thing. So whenever we say global, that means the window object. Even if you declare a global variable, it becomes, or it gets attached to the window object as a property or global functions. All the global functions that you may know of in case of JavaScript, like set timeout, set interval, open, or even document is a property on the window. Even everything is property on the window actually. There is nothing outside window. So window is available to that particular tab or window, of course, as the name suggests, by the browser, and this controls everything in your web page or web app or everything. So this is the global thing. Whenever we say something is global namespace or something, then of course it is under the window object. So it represents an open window in the browser. So of course this window object, then if I click I open something else, and these two are different window objects. They cannot access, so they cannot even talk to each other. Now if the document contains frames, so this is important. So if the document contains frames, the browser will create one window object for the HTML document, the parent one, and one for each frame. So for example, in case of your Plunker runs your own application into the frame. So what happens? So understand this thing. You have this Plunker application, right? So of course this is some kind of a web app. Now you are running your own app, which is again some sort of HTML, entire HTML into this guy, right? Whenever you run it, it's here. So of course it is, if you use window here, or not here actually, in the previous, here in the JavaScript, so then this window is only attached to this frame, whatever you are having, not the entire application of the Plunker. That is different. That's parent. So if you want to see the frame here, so you can directly see that there must be a frame, otherwise your editor cannot be possible. So here, this is the frame, which is your application. So if you open this guy, then you have your own document, you have your own HTML, your own head for your small application, and your body and everything. And even when you say the scripts and everything, these are local to this iframe. And what is outside this iframe? Well, then this is the entire Plunker application. So this is outside frame. So of course in this case there are at least two frames, or sorry, two window objects, one for the entire application that you have, and again you they are using Angular JS to implement their entire app, but the code or the demo that you are writing here is working inside another frame, because they want to separate, you want to separate out your code from, or your variables or everything related to your code or snippet from the Plunker application. So that's why they are using frame, and you can now sense that, okay, if you have anything in the frame that is independent from the outside, and of course outside also cannot access something within the frame. So that's why frame can be used properly. Of course I don't recommend to use it every time, but yeah, for example in this case frame is mostly very well required here. So this is the frame. So it has its own window object, and the application, the Plunker, has its own window objects, and two are independent. They cannot talk, and of course they cannot interact as well. Now, how to check the frames in case of your CDT? So if you go to the console, it says top frame, right? So this is one frame, which is the top level, which is the application, the Plunker application itself. Now then, if you say there are multiple other frames for extensions, which probably I'm using, and then there is this guy, run.plunker.co, which is your application actually. Or even if you see the frame here, which your application is running on, the source here belongs to this frame, Plunker preview. You have the name, right? Plunker preview target. So this is the frame where your application runs. Whatever you write in this editor, in JavaScript, in CSS or HTML, this is controlled via here. Now since we are here, and then I'm going to give you an example of how to handle a few things. For example, if you use in your normal application, if you define something on the window, you can access it here as well, because this is now on the top frame. But if you have something defined on the window object of like this, you will not be able to find if you type window here, window, and then try to see what do we have in the window. Well, you will never be able to find my_var in this window object, because usually we can get it. So where is my M starting, ending? Nothing. So we just have menu bar marked, that's it, right? No my_var here. Why? Because the window, when you type here and try to look the window object, well, you are going on the top frame, and as I said, the top frame window doesn't have this object. This object is on the window of the frame, this iframe. So for that, what you can do is just change the frame from here and then go to any child frame. So here is the one where your code is running, where this my_var will be defined on its window object. So just check it, and then when you do the window again, in that case you are directly referencing to the window object of this frame or your application that you are writing here, not the Plunker application. So you go there, and then of course if you try to see, you will be able to see the my_var. So if you want to debug through the multiple frames, then this is your frame. This is the top frame for the entire website, and then on as many frames as you have, you will be able to change the frame and so on the window object, and hence you can work on that one as well. So again, one small help here, so that you can use properly to just change the frame, and then you will be able to navigate among the frames as far as your code execution or debugging is concerned. Now that was the window object. So let's talk about some of the properties of the window object, and these properties can be objects again, or functions. If these are functions, then of course these are global functions. So one of such property, not the function, is document. So as we know that we don't have, whenever we want to access the global variable, we don't have to always tell window.my_var. We can always do my_var, and JavaScript will make sure that it tries to find out everywhere in the global namespace, which is the window. So here as well, although the document object is on the window like window.document, but you don't have to call window in that sense. So you see, document is a property on the window, but just like the global variable that you see, you can always call it without window. So it's document. So again, document has some cool methods to handle few things or related to DOM manipulation. So all the libraries, even the jQuery or whatever which is specializing in DOM manipulation or trying to change the DOM in any way, will require access to document. Otherwise nothing is possible. So you can see there are some methods or some functions available on the document, which are like create element, which is used to create a new element node or a new HTML element. Then we have the create text node. So of course we can create the text as well. The forms, if you try to access all the forms from the document, they are available in this array. Then there are three important methods like get element by ID. So you pass the ID value and then it will return the element by ID from the document. get elements by tag name. So since there is an as, so that means of course it will return an array of all the elements with the name. Then of course we can also search all the elements by tag name as well, and then it will return the array of those tag names as well. So these three are important as far as you want to traverse or you want to search an item, or not an item actually, the element from your DOM. You can get it from these three methods. And of course there are a few more methods like, or properties like title, which will allow you to set or change the title of your tab or the window. There's one more called document.write. It writes HTML expression to directly on the document, but don't use it ever. Some more document properties are here. Probably it should go to W3 schools, and there are a lot many available. You can try those ones, but I will just go with the easiest, or not the easiest, the important ones. So let's try to figure out what we can do using this. So we have this H1 guy, right? So we have lot many H1. One guy has one ID, and then other has some name. Although you should never have such kind of ID in names, but still. So something like this. We have three elements, and let's try to look into this properties. So let's get the element reference from here and then see what we can do with that. So we have document.get element by ID, right? Just pass the ID. What was the ID? H1 ID. So we have this, right? Let's put it into some element like this. Try to see if we can get the element or not. So of course you will see it's undefined or null. Hold on. Right? So you see, and you get null. So why it is null? Although we have the document, the element with the ID H1 ID, but still it's showing null. Okay, so here is the case with JavaScript. So again, this body will be initialized when it will be rendered, or when the DOM will be available, when of course the window or the browser can parse this HTML and then prepare the DOM, and then only, right? Until that time, if you execute your JavaScript, you will not be able to find out anything from the DOM, because DOM has not been prepared yet. So what's happening in this case is you are loading your JavaScript in the head. So it is even executing before you have a DOM ready. So that's why it is executing before that, but at that time there is nothing in the DOM. So if you try to find anything in the DOM like this, it will never be successful. So how to handle this issue? Well, the easiest one is to load this as the end of the body, something like this. And as soon as you do that, you have it, because now your DOM has been prepared before, and then you are executing your JavaScript. Later on we will see other methods as well, but this is the best or the easiest one. But again, you should never be dependent on this one, but still in this case it will work. We are not doing anything complex. For the complex times I will tell you how to handle different things. So this was the reason why, or this is the reason why I always ask you to load your scripts at the end, so that you don't have to put one more function to wait for the DOM ready and then execute your JavaScript. Now you can safely do it without writing any such JavaScript. So here what we did, going back again, so we tried to find the element from the document using its ID, because we said ID. So now you have the element, you try to log, so of course you can be logged. So it can be logged. So of course this is the guy with the ID, right, the between the hell guy. Yep. So you can get it. Another thing to note here is you get only one element, because ID should be unique for that entire document. So that's why you get only one element. Okay. Let's check something else. I'm putting elements document.get elements, the other methods I'm trying to find, by tag name. So you just pass what tag name that you are trying to find out, and then let's print it as well. So you see the first one, which is on line number 5, returns you one object or one DOM element. So this is the DOM element. Okay. The next one, which is elements, returns you an array with 3 elements, because you are trying to search while the tag name, and then of course there can be many tag name with the same name in your document. There can be many h1, there can be many divs, there can be many p or span or any elements, right? So that's why JavaScript will return you an array. Even if there is one element or no element, then also it will return you an array or empty array, depending on whether it could find or not in the document. So that's why this S here, elements, suggest specifically here that it will return you a collection or an array in this case. So if you try to see, this is an array, right? It has a length property, and then here it can safely say you 3 elements, which is one here, other here, other here, and they are all the DOM elements. Now this is the one. Now we can also have something called get by or elements by name. In that case, what we can do is, do we have something name? Yep, we do have h1 name. So if you do something like that, then also you will realize that ID will always return single element, no array, nothing. It's a single element. In case of get elements by name, you are still getting an array, right? Like this. Why? Because you can have multiple elements with the same name. That's how your radio or input type radio works. They all have the same name. Whatever value is true, that is sent on the form submit, or that's what you access. So of course, more than one element can have the same name. And name is the property which is sent to the server when you submit the form, not the ID. So this is how you can reference or at least get access to the elements via any one of these 3 methods. So of course here we haven't seen anything with the CSS selector or that kind of thing. But in jQuery, I will come back to this document again, and I will explain you there are 2 other methods called query selector and query selectors all, something like that. So there are 5 methods in total to select an element from your DOM, depending whether you are trying to select via a tag name, a name, or an ID, or using CSS or any combination of selector. So this is one way. Then of course we will talk about this too on the next page. Then of course you can access the title. So if you try to do something like this, you will be able to access the title, which is, I think, null, blank. Yep, because there is no title. So this is the title, and you will be able to access it. As I said, there are more properties like document.create attribute, all those different things. But we will see these 2 specific ones for creating nodes or HTML nodes. So we'll see this on the next page. So of course we get something from these elements, right? So what did we get actually? So this is some sort of elements, right? That's why I'm calling elements. Right now you just see a tag. Well, actually these are the DOM elements. To see the DOM elements, just use dir. And then you will be able to see a DOM element, and then what do we have in the DOM element? So you have all these properties in the DOM element. So the first one, let's forget the second one. So we have one DOM element here, and it will have all the properties, whatever attributes you put here on this element. We are selecting this one, right? They will all be available in the attributes map, like this. Like we have the ID, so they are all available here. This is the base URI of your application. So many things. How many children it contains? Nothing. 0. How many child nodes are there? So of course there is only one node. So this is important to understand. In case of JavaScript, I don't know why somebody took this decision. This text that you have in a particular node is actually on another node. Although we don't see that node is called the text node. So That's why if you try to create an element on the fly and if you want to put some text inside that element, you have to first create a new node inside this node. So, and that node is a text node, and then you have to put text on that text node. So that's why you have this method, create text node, because just by putting create element or just by calling create element, it will just call the element. Although even here in your CDT or in any case, you will never see the text node except in IE8 CDT, I think. Not the CDT, it is called the EDT or whatever, IDT, Internet Explorer Developer Tools. So there you will find the text node. So there will be one more node in between, and there it will be saying, okay, this is the text node and this is your text. So that's how it will lay out in case of IE, probably older one. I'm not sure if today as well or in the current IE as well, but I have seen in IE. In case of all other browsers, or like in Firefox, in case of Chrome, they will not show this text node. They will just directly show its value in the developer tools. But you have to understand that there is a text node, and this is why you are having child nodes on this H1. So you are figuring, or you are going through the H1 node, right? But if you see, there is no other node here. So only node that you have here, which is available in the child nodes array or list, is a text node. And then this text node has the value somewhere. Text content is hell. Whole text is also hell. So many properties. Node value is hell. So many things. So this is the child node. Then of course it doesn't have any other children. Classes, well, there is no class, CSS class, so otherwise there will be some class list, different things, height, whether it can be dragged, so of course it cannot be dragged, what is the ID, what is the inner HTML, inner text, different things, so many different properties that probably you will. And then of course there are so many events as well. Right now they are all empty because you didn't write any event handler for those. So far they are all the outer HTML, which will include the entire HTML, of course. Then like the tab index, what is the style attribute doing here? So right now you see all are empty because you haven't specified any style attribute, different things. So this is your entire DOM element that you get via this methods. Now when we create, so of course using the create element, we can create the same DOM element again. So we will see what to do after that. So we would want to add it to the DOM back, right? When we create something on the fly, let's say you are creating one P element on the fly or one div element on the fly, you want to set that back onto the DOM, otherwise it is not available, not visible. So we will talk about the element API now. So which is the DOM element. So element object represent an HTML element or HTML tag. Actually it represents the DOM element. So what are the properties or functions that we have on the element object? So once you get the element, so there are two ways to get the element, either via creating element or referencing an element from the already existing DOM. So there are two, and these two will return you the element object. Now on that element you can do something like ID, which will return you the ID of the element. You can say what is the name of this node, and it will return the name of the element, like whether it's a H1 element, P element, all these different things, node value. If there is class attribute, the class name will return the class attribute value. Then of course you can use something like get attribute, which will return you the value of that particular attribute. If you want to set a new attribute on the element using JavaScript, you can use the set attribute. Just provide the attribute and the value that you want to set. Has attribute, so it will check whether this attribute is available on this element or not. This is important. Inner HTML, using that you can write, or you can update the content of this element, style, first style, some lot many other properties. You should be able to clone as well if you want to clone this element. So let's try a combination of this in our example. So right now you see there are three ones, right? Let me just get rid of two. So I have the one default one. So what we are trying to do here is, let's have div element here instead of this. So what we are trying to do now, we will get a reference to div element, this div element. Then using JavaScript, we will create one P element here and write some text into this. Of course you will be closing it again, and we will also be putting some attribute, something like id myp. So we'll be doing all this using JavaScript and add this element back onto the div elements. We'll do all this using the methods that we have available or we have gone through before. So let's come here. First of all, what we have to do is we have to create the element, right? We don't have any p element as of now. So let's say create element. Just pass what type of element that you want to create. So of course it's a p element. And now even if you try to print right now, you can see it's a p element, but right now it is not attached to the DOM, it's just in the memory. So we have done that. Let's call it plm. Now what we want to do here is we want to set it. Okay, before that we want to put some text here. So for that we have to create a text node. So let's create one text node on top of that. Let's call it ptext, and let's say document dot create text node, something like this. Now we have okay, just pass the text that you want here. So let's say something like JavaScript. Okay, so we have this text node now with some content, of course. And what we have to do is we have to add this text node onto the element, because the parent of text node is the element itself, right? So how to do that? Well, we already have something called append child. So if we use the append child, that means whatever you pass inside here will be added to this element as the last element. There is something else well called remove child or replace child. So as the name suggests, they are whatever you pass in the arguments will be removed from the element. In this case, it will be replaced via those things. So of course there will be two arguments here. So what we will do now, we will add, sorry, there is nothing called add child, it's append child, and then we can add ptext onto that. Really? Okay. So we have this append child now. Of course we have not added it to the DOM yet, it is just flying in the memory. There's one question. Would it be better to use var ptext or just ptext is fine? Well, if you see, I have used comma here. So I'm using the same var statement, but they are all comma separated. So they are not independent, or I have not forgot to use var keyword. Var is still there, and of course you can separate out via commas, right? So that's what I did. Now we have added the text as well to the p element. If you want to see, you can just go and see. Let me log p element, and it will be a proper element with the text as well, something like this. If you don't add the text like this, and if you try to put, then of course it will be just empty p element. So remember to use p or the text node for putting any sort of content here, any type of text content. There is another better method than text node, but we will go to that one. Now we are here. What we want now is to access this div guy. This is a div, right? And since it's only one, I can just access by a tag name as well. So we will access it, and then we will add that p element here using append child. So let's access it. So what I'm gonna do is get elements by tag name, and then of course I want to have a div. If you try to print div as of now, you will see that it's an array because you have requested elements. So this is an array. So for that you have to get it out of the array. So to get anything out of the array is what? Just use the index of the array, right? So now we have this div which is already having a text hello plunker. We want to add this p element inside the div, and since div is already on the DOM, we are good. We just have to use append child on div element and pass p element into that. So that's what we'll be doing, div element dot append child, and then let's say add plm. So as soon as we do that, you can see that there is a new content here, and if you try to see what is there, then of course you will see, okay, there is a div element, and now we have added a new element using JavaScript, and we have put the content as well, the JavaScript. I think we also wanted to put attribute, so let's use the set attribute method on p element. So let's say plm dot set attribute, and then set something kind of id, my p or something. That's it. Okay, double dots. So this is it. Now even you have id on this top in the p element. If you want to see on the CDD, you can inspect it, and there will be id as well. So now you can see, I mean, you can set any attribute, any class, anything on this p element. So that's all easy. Now what if you have a long JavaScript? Sorry, not JavaScript. You have the long HTML string, not just the text. And in that case, just using text node would not be better approach. So there is also something called inner HTML. So I'm gonna get rid of this. And in case of inner HTML, you don't have to create anything. So before I move, any doubt on this example as of now? Otherwise, I'm gonna change it. Okay. So we have seen that how to put text into your HTML or HTML elements. Now we want to make something a little better. So what we will do, of course there is nothing ptext as of now. We want to put a large HTML string in this p element, not just a normal text. So what we can do is plm dot inner HTML, and here you can provide any string that you want. So it can be this is, but you want to use span for the JavaScript, something like this, and then I don't know, some more things. What else can you use? Some input type, text, all these things in a same thing, in a single line, or not a single line, in a single string that you can put. And then as soon as you use inner HTML, which is very important to set, or it can even return you the content of the element, and that content can also be the HTML string, not just the text. So of course it is much more powerful than your normal create text node, because in case of create text node, everything will be considered as text, and even these elements will be escaped. So just to make sure that this behaves as HTML element, you have to use inner HTML, set it like this, and when you run, you will be getting something like this. If you expand it, everything is properly initialized. So you have the p element, you have some string or some text on that one, but you also have one HTML node with span, and I forgot to close it, so it's here, and one input as well. This is a very new feature, shadow root, which is good actually. We'll explain probably at the end of everything. This is one of the forthcoming feature of HTML DOM API, the shadow root. Otherwise you will get only this in not many browser. It is only implemented in Chrome as of now. So yep, that's how you can use these two APIs for document as well as your element, and then perform all, or even write entire your JavaScript just using, sorry, entire your HTML page just using JavaScript, right? But of course you don't want to do this much code, so you keep your JavaScript for some other reasons like DOM manipulation, or just manipulating or adding few small things, not just creating entire HTML page. You can always get your HTML page from your backend or your HTML files, so that's why you don't want to create the entire page. But still, you want to know how to reference your elements, or if you require how to create some elements on the fly, you can use JavaScript for that. And also the most important part is to change the style of. So you can use the class name, or you can use the class list or add something to the class list, or there is also style attribute. You can perform all these things. And even when you use jQuery, that's what it is doing. It's only helping you not to write that much code. It will help you in shorter functions, and then you don't know what's happening in the inside jQuery library or something. So that's what, if you check the source code of the jQuery library, it is all doing all this thing inside the code. So that was the DOM element. And of course you can go there for more DOM element properties. There are a lot more. So many things. So let's come back to window objects. So of course there is something called location as well, which is again a property on the window, but you can always use location without having to use window dot location. You can always use location dot something something. So there are so many properties and few methods. Let's see what is the importance of each different property here. So we are here. This is our okay. So first of all, why location is used? So you use location to get access to this guy, to this string, or whatever you call it, this address or the URI. So you want to get reference of that, and then so that will be available in the location, which is an object. And then there are certain more properties. So you can still, or you can get access to each individual thing here. For example, if you just want the host, you can get it, just the port, the path, the search string, all different things. You can get it here. So let me just do something here, some value, and okay, and 53. Let's see what happens. Okay, so it stays because it's a single page application, and this is of course has no value. There is no server, so it's all good. So we have, let's talk about what do we have in the location actually. So if you see, there is one location object which you can access while using location, and there are so many things, right? So we see what do we have in the href. So in href, the first property, you see there is an entire address that you can have. So you have your protocol, you have the host name, the port, the path, the query string, and as well as the hash. So if you see the next one, which is protocol, then protocol is just the HTTP, meaning the first part, whether you want to check if in some reason whether you are running on HTTP or HTTPS using JavaScript, just check the location.protocol and it will return you this string. We have host name. So of course it is a host name without port, that is your host name. Then we have port separately, which is this by 8080, the part here. Then we have the host, which is host name and port here. So it's a concatenation of host name plus port using colon in the between. Then we have the search, which is for the query string. So you see the search here. It isn't nothing but anything after anything, that sort of thing. For example, starting with the question mark, meaning it is a search string or the query string or whatever you call it. So that's your search string. If you have multiple parameters, if you want to send multiple parameters to, let's say, your server, so this is your param1, let's call it value 1 or something. You can also have multiple parameters separated by ampersand. Going back, so of course in that case your search will have the entire parameter, all the parameters for entire string starting from here ending just before the hash. That's your one. So where do you have this hash property or hash value? Then of course it is inside hash here. So that's your hash. So we have all these properties here, and then we have few functions like reload, replace, and assign. So here of course they are only the function definitions. Let's see what happens. I do location.reload. So of course you can reload or refresh your page just by typing this function in your JavaScript, and the entire page will refresh. Then we have replace. So you can use replace and pass a URL here in the parameters. So whenever you use it, your browser will go to that particular URL. The only difference between assign and replace, which are kind of similar, the only difference is in case of replace, it will also remove it from the document history. So you won't be able to go back to that page if you use replace. If you use assign, then of course it will load the new document, but it will also add that to the document history so that you can use the back and forward button in that case. Try these things. In between, I have one question. Could you give us some scenario where we would need hash entire your application or your project? You would be just using hashes, because if you will be creating a single page application and this is your friend in this case. I will explain more on hash when we cover AngularJS, probably exactly a week from now, but still. And again, all these hash values, they have no meaning on the server side. They are just for here, just for the UI. If you send this hash to the server side, let's see what do you send actually. So if you see, this guy is not even sent to the server side. So browser will not send anything after the hash. So if you want to use hash for your own purpose on the UI, which all single page applications uses just to change the views, so you can safely use that one. So only thing that is sent to the server is anything before hash, and that's why hash is the last part. So yep, we have three methods. We have much of the properties which you can use to get particular segment of this entire address bar. So this is your location object. What else? Yeah, we have history as well. So history is your browser history for this particular tab, not the entire browser. You cannot access the entire history from your JavaScript because all the browser will block it for security reason, but you can still handle the history of this particular tab. So if I right click, in case of Chrome, I have gone through all these pages while this page was active. So this is the current history here. So you can use, or you can access, or go back, go forward, or jump to a particular number of pages back or forward using all these three different methods. So let's try this. Let's say I'm going to Wikipedia. I have this. So this is the first page that you went into this application, right? I said, okay, what is open source? So this is the next page that you have changed your URL in the same tab. Let's say computer software, okay, then computer programs, and then something else, algorithms. So you have changed so many pages. Now you want to go to a particular page in your history, of this particular tab. So if you click here, right click, you will see there are so many pages that you have traversed so far, or you have looked so far, but you want to do that using JavaScript. So what you can do is you can do history dot back. So if you use back, then of course you can go one level back, or it will just mimic if user would click back button once. So if you do that, I don't know what was, okay, we search computer program, so let's see, it will go there. So yep, it is on the computer program. Now you want to go back, so of course you can go back one more level, which is your software. If you want to go forward now, that is of course forward like this, and then of course it will go to computer program, the forward thing in the history. What if you want to go to a particular page or particular distance from now? So let me just go to back or forward now first. Nope, like this. So I'm at the end, right? I don't have anything in the forward now. Just wanted to show something. So right now we have 4 pages. I want to go to 3rd page from now. So you can use your history.go, and here you can pass, I want to go -3. So in that case it will bring you to open source software like this. And again you can jump forward and back using plus and minus. So you can say I want to move 2 pages forward in the history, so you can go there as well, and then it's on the computer program. What was there in between? Software. Okay, so that's how it is also useful for different purposes if you want to control the history as well. Then we have something else called screen, and you use it to figure out the height and width of your entire screen, not just the window, entire screen, which is kind of useless for most of the time, but still if you want to have it, you can have it. So let's say I want to check the window screen. There are different things. So there are 2 properties called avail height and avail width, which are just telling you the available height and available width for your application. Now even the application which is Chrome in this case. So if you see available height and available width, it will ignore it will exclude the operating system taskbar like this, because of course this space is not usable, right, for any application in case of Windows. And the dock, if you are using Mac or Ubuntu, you have the side dock, right? So of course if you use available height and available width, it will exclude those dimensions. What if you want to get for the entire screen? Well, just use height and width in that case on screen, and that will return you entire width and height in terms of resolution. You can also have pixel depth, so which is important if you are using some retina display or some high multi-pixel device like all of your Nexus, I think as of now, all of your iPhones or Retina iPhones, Retina MacBook, Retina iPads, all they have different pixel depth. So again, your bits per pixel depends how many pixels you have per inch. So you can even run this thing here. Let's try screen.height. So of course my screen is typical 14-inch computer, 1366 768 pixel. If you see the available something, then of course out of 768, 40 pixels are covered by this taskbar, so I don't have those available. I think I should be having entire width available to me. Yes, because there is no dock on the sideways. So, and what about the pixel, whatever it was, pixel depth? So you 24 pixel per unit. Sorry, 24 bits per pixel. So that's your pixel depth. So now let's talk about the timing methods, which are very important. So what if you want to execute something in future? So of course you can call set timeout, and you can say, well, execute this function this much time in the future from now. So the syntax is you pass the reference of the function in the set timeout, the first argument. The second is number of milliseconds that you want these functions to execute after. So this is one syntax which is for all of the browsers. There is one more called function milliseconds, and then you can pass an array of parameter to this function, and this is used in all the browsers plus IE10 and higher. Now you don't even need this function actually, or this syntax. You can always use this one with a different approach. So before that, let's go with the minimal example. So we have this small code. So we have one function not doing nothing except just logging something. Then what you are doing is you are calling set timeout, and you are saying call this function after 5 seconds, meaning 5000 milliseconds, right? So that's what it will do, basic function actually. So if you run it, it will log after 5 seconds, or it will call some func after 5 seconds, which will log it for you. And then you can see this is there, some func, right? So of course it is there. Now let's see one more thing. Right now forget about this timeout ID, just be something like this, and then of course after 5 seconds it will log. So it is there in the 5 seconds. Now the thing is, this function is asynchronous, meaning it will take a reference of the function and then it will execute in the future. But if you try to print something here right now, something like after set timeout, because that's why I'm using after, this function will of course be executed right away. So you will see after right now, although it was defined after set timeout, and then you will be able to, or then after 5 seconds it will make a call to this, and then it will be printing. So you see the order here. So remember this thing, your set timeout is kind of an asynchronous, or it will work asynchronously, because you are asking it to perform something in the future. So of course it is kind of a promise to you that, okay, I will do this thing in the future. That's what you do, right, when you do promise. So this is some func, and of course it will be executed after 5 seconds. And this is your console.log, which will execute just after set timeout. Of course set timeout will call this function after 5 seconds. So this is one of the understanding that you should be having regarding this timing functions. Now let's see what you want. You want to send some parameter to this guy, right? You just want to send something, and instead of using that, you want to print that string that you want to send. Now let's forget about this. You can just call it here and send it, but you will see this is, oh sorry, but what has happened here, this is not even executing after 5 seconds. Since you are calling function right away, it is executing just there. So what set timeout requires is this reference to this function, not a call to that function. So how to do that in that case? Well, if you are using a browser like i10 or higher, you can use this one, but I don't like this one because we already have one awesome solution for that, which is your anonymous functions. Just create one anonymous function inside, and then from there either make a call to some func via whatever string you want, or even return it from there. And yep, that is perfectly fine. It will run after 5 seconds, and then it will print whatever you did here. So the solution here is to use anonymous function, and then of course it will always work irrespective of the browser version. This is good one, or a good approach to handle these things. Okay, any questions? Okay, and since we are here, I will show you one more trick of Chrome console. So we have one method called time, and then we have to just provide the label to that time. So let's say my timer, something like this. You can use time and then another thing which is called time end. And what the Chrome will do is it will keep track of the time spent between two operations and then return it to you whenever you use time end. So what it did here, of course you can see you have started your timer, right, and then it went inside here and then it printed close the timer, and then of course that's what you are seeing. That's what you are seeing here. So you see the previous one was wrong because it took a lot much time to execute the JavaScript. This is exact time. So of course it is taking some 5007 milliseconds, which is fine because you asked for 5000. Of course it won't be exact 5000 milliseconds, something above, because you are printing after one line. Of course it will calculate the difference between these two, something like that. So you can always use the time, so which is the place where you will start, or the Chrome will start calculating the time or counting the time, and then you can use time end to end that counter and then return you the difference, something like this in millisecond, of course. So there is another cool method in case of console, and this is only available in Chrome. I'm not sure about other consoles, so you can use it. That is just for the debugging. Okay, so that's your set timeout. Now for some reason, if you want to cancel this timeout before execution, so let's say you have put 50 seconds here, or right now these are just 5 seconds, but you have 50 seconds. So you started the timeout for 50 seconds, but around 20 seconds or something you found out, I need to cancel this timeout because I don't want to execute this function after 50 seconds. So as long as you are in between 0 and the value that you have provided here, you can call this clear timeout function, which is again the global function, and it will cancel out that set timeout that you have set it before. Now what do you pass here? So you pass an ID, which is kind of a promise actually. So you pass this promise, which is returned by the set timeout. So that is why it is useful. So just get that promise into timeout. and then you can cancel it after some time if you want. As long as you are in between this range from 0 to 5000 millisecond, you can cancel it. You can call the clear timeout and then you can cancel in between, so it will never be executed, because what you are doing here is just setting it and canceling it. So of course, even after you say 1 second, 1 millisecond, it will never be executed because it is cancelled. That's why you use clear timeout. The utility of this function is not that much required compared to the next one that we're gonna talk now. So this is for setting timeout. It will execute a function after a given time interval, but just once, right? Only once. What about if you want to execute something multiple times or infinitely or after some interval? So of course there is another method called set interval, and as the name suggests, same format, no difference, except in this case the behavior would be it will call this function sumfunc after every 5 seconds. So it will execute it after every 5000 millisecond or 5 seconds. So here after some time you will want to stop this execution, right? You don't want to go it infinitely. So in that case you can use clear interval and just pass the ID that was written from the set interval to it, and then you can clear it after some time. So now let's see the example of both of this together. So of course you have this, why wait for this much time, just have 1 second each. So we will see started executing after each second, and that's why you see the counter running. Now you don't want to execute it for infinitely, so what you will do is you can call clear interval. Now I don't want to call clear interval right away, I will call after some time and just once, right? So again I'm gonna use set timeout here, and here I can use anonymous function. Then let me cancel out the timer after 5 seconds or something. So yep, since everything is global, I'm good. So this is the starting 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's it. Only 5 times. So it is cancelled after 5 times, and of course it will never increase after 5, or it will never execute sumfunc after 5 seconds. So that's how you can play with all these timers. And again, remember that they all are executing these functions in the future. If you write anything after that, well, that may be executed before executing this function, because it will behave kind of asynchronously, meaning executing something in the future. So control will always go to the next line after this line execution. Okay, so this is all about your timing methods. So we have 4 timing methods which are global and defined on the window object, but you don't have to use window dot, you can directly use these functions like this. So that is what we have. We may be having something else, for example open and close. So what if you want to open a new pop-up, not a very fancy pop-up, just a browser pop-up that most of the website opens. So of course for that you have the open, you pass the URL, you pass the target or the most probably empty string or a blank, so it will open in a new window, which is always, then some specs, and then some replace thingy. Now here in case of specs, if you go to the window object, window.open in JavaScript, it's one of the weird method actually. So in case of specs, there are so many spec or specifications, right? But in so many things you will see IE only, Internet Explorer only, IE only, Opera only, so Opera, Firefox only, all these different things. So that's why I haven't included everything. I have included only the basic ones, and you should never open the tab. Well, you should always restrict opening the tab. Avoid opening the tab should be the better word, because once you open it, you don't have control of that particular tab. It's out of your control or out of the control of this JavaScript. So the only thing that you have is one reference for that open tab, and that's it. You can only call close on that one, nothing else. So for that only you can say at least set this common, or all browser supports this common specification or specs like height, width, left and top. So of course if you want to open something, a new tab, you can just open via this one, and then it refers or it sends you a reference to that particular opened window so that you can close it later on, something like this. So whenever it runs, it will open a google.com tab, and then the location and the size of this tab are defined by here. 600, 400 is the height, and top is 100 pixel. If you see left, that's a 200 pixel, so of course it will be position at that place. Well, Chrome doesn't work with left. Awesome. So again, this is one of the most notorious cross-browser issues. Well, I think it should work now. Nope, Chrome doesn't take now. Chrome says, I don't know what you are doing. Yeah, so it doesn't even care about left, I think. So it takes care only about top, I assume. So yeah, so we have said, okay, what URL to open and what are the specs that you want, that you can set, like width and height, top. Now let's say you want to close this window after some time. So you have opened it now, you want to close it after, I don't know, 10 seconds. For some, I'm just giving you examples so that I can show you how to use close method. So in the JavaScript where you have opened the window, you can get a reference of the my window, and then you can call my window dot close. But here if you do, I mean, it will be closed right away, right? So let's put some set timeout on this one. And let's say after 5 seconds, not now, close it after 5 seconds. So it will close after 5 seconds automatically. Yep, here we go. So you can use close as well as open methods on the window to achieve this thing. Again, then you can also access the height and width of the window, which is important. The last one that we saw regarding screen, well, rarely, I haven't used it ever. The only time I required some dimensions, I always go with the window inner width and inner height. So what are these two, or why we have inner and outer, not just some width and height? Well, the reason is if you use inner width and inner height, then it will return those width and height of the Windows content area. So of course it will exclude the toolbar of the browser, which of course you don't have access to, and you shouldn't need that because your page starts from here. You should always care only about inner width and inner height. But still, if you want to access the entire height of, for some reason, entire height of the window, then of course there are two other methods like outer width and outer height, which will include toolbar as well as scroll bar. So right now there is no scroll bar, right? So if you use outer width, it will include the scroll bars as well, and outer height as well, including the toolbar. But if you use inner width and inner height, nothing, just the plain content, excluding toolbar and scroll bar. So of course you can use those things as well. And then something like window dot inner something. So yep, it's 433 1366 because I don't have any scroll bar on the side, so that's why it's full width. But window inner height is just 433, which is from here to here. CDT is not counted in window, it is outside actually. So of course these are some basic properties on the window, some method. What else? Okay, so I'm gonna give you 10 minutes of break, and then we will start with encode URI and some other methods. In the meantime, you can go back to your previous slides and see if you have any doubt or something. Otherwise we'll start from here after 10 minutes. Okay, so I have one question. in your Ample project. Well, that's not my project. It's just the website that I built for one company based in India. How did you make the image in your carousel responsive? I don't know. I mean, first of all, I have to see which image are you talking about. I forgot. Okay, this one. Well, this is nothing simple. It's a background image actually, first of all. So it's a background on the container which is having carousel, which is this section. And there, you don't have to do anything with the responsive. What I did here is just load that image, which is very large. And then no repeat, and background attachment is scroll. So if I scroll, of course, the attachment is also going up. The important thing is this background size cover. So I am using the background size 100%, and then I'm using background size cover. This is to support those browsers as well which don't support background size cover. So if they don't know this, they will always apply size and they will ignore cover. If the browsers are supporting cover, they will override background size 100% with background size cover. So that's what I did, and as soon as I scroll down, reduce the width, since I am using background size cover, or even if you use background size whatever it is 100%, the image will be smaller and smaller. Of course, there is no mobile with this width, right? The minimum that I care about is 320 pixel, which is iPhone. And this is all screwed up. Okay, we are good. Like this. So that's what I used. Background size cover, and that's enough to make it responsive. And again, I think if you use 3 different images instead of one background inside carousel, then by default I think there is width set on this carousel in Bootstrap, which will say something like max width equal to 100%. So it should be enough. Okay. Any other question? Okay, if you have any question, don't paste your code inside this window question box. I mean, I can't even look it properly. If you have anything, post it on Slack. Although I will go with this example or whatever you have pasted, but again, it creates a mess of this. So you see this IMG. Carousel inner item IMG tag, and it says position absolute 00 main width is 100. Did you write this CSS for the IMG? Is it in Bootstrap? Then are you having some problem with this? It says min width is 100%, so of course max width is also 100%. So you have to just put your image or IMG tag inside the item. There should be something with the item, some div with the item, I think. Yep, this one. And put your image anywhere inside here. I have some container. So if you put it here somewhere, it will be a rolling image. And I think it should be having a carousel effect.
Hi Praveen.
Yeah.
So basically, the problem which I'm facing with this image tag is that when I put multiple images inside that carousel, if I resize my screen, the image stretches. It doesn't actually resize the resolution of the image. It's just that the image itself stretches or loosens, something like that. The height remains constant. It's just the width changes of the image. So, it gives the illusion of stretching.
Hold on. I'm not even sure if they are having multiple images here. So yeah, there is one image and then that's it. They don't have any content. Oh, they do have. So they are having how many? 3 different images. Can I play with this guy? Okay, so I think we have 3 images now. So if okay, because there is a height fix, just remove the height. And then in that case, of course, you have to fix something here.
Well, I tried to do that. If we have the position as fixed, and then we have the minimum height or the height set to 100%, it works. But then it doesn't give the illusion of that carousel moving per image. It just gives the illusion of the text moving, but the image remains fixed. And then
Yeah,
when the next
because
text
you
comes
have
in,
fixed the
the
image.
image just changes. Sorry?
Yeah, because you have fixed the image actually. So it is here. Does everything or anything else has the height? Okay, this guy. And remove this one as well. Well, what else? Yep, now we have it. What happened to the third image? Did I delete? Okay. So yeah, now just remove all the width, oh sorry, all the heights that you see here on the item as well as on the image and on the carousel. Well, carousel you can put actually. Okay, so carousel is also the issue.
Yeah.
Get rid of that and then try to work with that. So of course in that case you will have this. That's what you want, right? Responsive height as well.
Well, actually, I want it not to be responsive height-wise. Just
In that case it
width-wise.
will stretch. I mean how?
No, I mean, if we, so basically what I was talking about when I said that, if we set the position as fixed, and in the max width property, the media property, we can have it respond to width changes, by setting the left tag and also the, what you say, margin as minus some pixels, some number of pixels. But then in that case, it doesn't give a good illusion of that carousel. It doesn't give that carousel feel. So I was thinking, like, is there any way to go around this by keeping the height same, but then resizing the image itself? You know?
So what you are doing is you are keeping the height same, but you are
Yeah.
trying to resize the image, mean you are changing the width. Will not that change your aspect ratio of the image and your image will be distorted?
Um, Actually, I have an example. I'll just paste you the link. Where should I paste the link? On the Slack
Well,
or here itself?
link you can paste here.
Okay, just a minute.
Ah, I think they will also use background size cover. Full page background, yep, that's so stupid. So here you see. But of course, in this case, you won't be having carousel because this image is fixed to the background.
Yeah, so I was thinking, is there any way to have this image fixed to the inner carousel, the inner item, in the carousel tag, to give the similar effect as the entire screen over here in this uh, file as for just one carousel window.
Try to put position equals to relative on the parent of this guy, so which is your item. Well, it is already relative, so of course it's not working.
Yeah.
Well, if you use position fixed, then of course it's not going to work because it is fixed to the browser. Try
Yeah.
with position absolute.
It's actually okay. No, it stretches, I think, over here.
What?
It stretches, I think, in this example too. If you use position absolute, no.
Wasn't same happening in the previous case? Right now, you see. It will stretch because after some time, because when you have the width more than 1024 pixel, because right now this is the width of this actual image from there. So if you don't have that much width, so for example, it will work properly until I am on the height of around 1024, and as soon as I move above that height, or sorry, width, it's try to stretch now because of course you are asking for entire 100% width.
Okay.
So if you want to have that effect, just have some larger image for around 1400 pixel or something.
And I'm actually using an image which is around 1920 by 1080.
So of course it will not work. It will stretch.
It will stretch, yeah.
Because 1920 is just here. And then you are trying to, because your normal laptops are what, 1366 at least at this time.
Yeah.
So of course it will be stretched.
So you suggest to use a smaller image?
Larger image, I said. If you don't want to scale that image outside container.
So what will be the resolution for such an image? And just an example. With respect to the laptop screen, I'm saying.
1366 width at least.
Sorry?
1366 the width of the screen. Oh, sorry, width of the window. So if you try in your laptop window dot
Yeah, it's
inner width
by 768.
Yep. Right now it's 762 because I have just this much screen. CDT is not counted.
Yeah.
So try with that.
And just try and let you know if it works.
Yep.
Thanks.
No problem. Okay, so let's start talking about encoding and decoding. These are just for converting something into UTF-8. Okay, nothing else. Not the UTF-8, it is just the ASCII or ISO code actually. If it was UTF, then probably you would have sent smiles or your emoticons in URL, but you cannot. Anyways, coming to this one. So there are two methods called encode URI and decode URI. And why do we have this? Well, so let's say you have such a URL, right, which is having space in the URL. Of course, rarely will find some this sort of URL, but so if you find somewhere where your domain name or the path segment of your URL or URI are having spaces, in that case, if you try to put this into the browser, it will not work because browser will not be understand what is this spaces. So for that, what you have to do is you have to convert or you have to encode this thing. So you use the encode URI, and then when you encode it, all the spaces or any other characters which is not supposed to be on the browser will be changed into these characters, which you have mostly seen if you have downloaded pirated music videos on songs.pk or something like that. So yeah, this is why you have all these different things, because on those files, these files are named via your songs names or something, which may have spaces and all different things. So of course, for that purpose, if you try to use or go to that particular URL with all different things, it's better encode them first, so it will be converted into a proper URL that you can send on the network. Now, what if the other way? If you want to decode from here to the proper URL, well, you can just use decode URI, and then it will convert that particular encoded one into the decoded format. So that's why you use encode URI and decode URI. Mostly you don't use it because all our URLs are proper, in your companies as well. Your URLs will be proper, so don't worry about that. The problem is only when you're trying to do some downloads, like some PDF download, and the name of the PDF is having spaces. In that case, when you put it on the browser, you should be encoding the URI. Now, that's why I said, I mean, usually you won't be having spaces, but the more useful case is encoding the query string. So right now there is no query string. The query string is the part after question mark, which is part of the GET request, and those parameters are sent to the servers. So for that, sometimes you may have to do that. So for that purpose, actually we have encode URI component and the reverse of that, which is decode URI component, and these two are different actually. So encode URI or URI functions are used for just the purpose of encoding or decoding the URL or the host name and the path segment or part of the URL. What about this these parameters like this? Well, in that case, you have to use component thing, or encode URI component or decode URI component. So in this particular case, let's say I have this URL, right? Some URL. So what I want to send is from my front end, I want to send another URL as parameter to some other URL. So probably you want to send this URL to your server saying, okay, do something with this URL and then make a call to this URL from the server, something like that. But you have this URL on your front end. Now, if you want to send this URL to the server as a get parameter here, or even a post parameter, doesn't matter. Well, in that case, you have to encode this URI component. Why? Oh, using the URI component. Why? Well, let me give you the example. So let's say you don't encode it. So what happens then? You just have a parameter value, right? And then you are trying to send this parameter value to another URL as in the param1. So that's what you are saying, where param1 value will come here, some param 200, I don't know, something. So if you just say something like this and paste it here or put it here, then you will see that. Let's see what happens. So here you will see, okay, this is, or your server will see something like this is the protocol, domain, some path, parameter 1 is starting here, then this is the value of the parameter 1. Okay, so one more question mark. Well, your server say I already have question mark, so I'm good. But your server will confuse at this ampersand, and he will start thinking like, okay, probably first parameter has ended here, and this is the next parameter B for this domain, and then one more parameter param2 equals to 100 for the domain. So that's how your server will break out these parameters for you. On the server side, when you use, for example, request.get parameter, you will have 3 parameters actually on the server side: param1, B, and param2. But if you actually see here in this URL, you only try to send param1 and param2. The A and B are coming from this parameter, which should be encoded actually. So that's why you will want to encode this value in 1, so that your server side on domain.com you just have parameter 1 and parameter 2. That's it, not this B. The reason why you are having this issue is because you are having this ampersand from here as well, and your server will not be able to understand where is your param1 ending, because it will break 1 ampersand. That's it. So just to avoid that, what you should be doing is, so when you will be using encode URI component, and then in that case you will see param1 is here, then your param1 values is starting, and then of course all these values have been encoded, some string xyz.com question mark, maybe this one A and something, and you see there is no ampersand here. The reason is, I mean, you encoded that, so of course this ampersand has gone. So now your server will properly see param1 starting from here, no ampersand, the first ampersand is here, which is fine, the param2, that's what you wanted. You wanted to send 2 parameters, param1 and param2, to domain.com. The value of the param1 is another URL. That is the case in our system. So not just this, if you have any other sort of user entered value that you want to send to your server, encode it, or use the encode URI component. Your server will automatically decode it for you, so you don't have to decode on the server side. It will automatically decode that for you. So for that purpose, use encode URI. And for some reason, if you want to decode this encoded version, just use decode URI component, which is just reverse of converting from this garbage looking thing into your properly, nicely understood URL. So again, every time when you ask user for some input and then you want to send that input to your server, use encode URI component method and encode it and then send it to your server. Because if there is some weird character in the user entered value, well, in that case it will be breaking your URL as well as your server. Okay, so yep, any user entered or anything, even if you create something in JavaScript which may have some ampersand or some other special characters which are not supposed to be there, just encode. And again, remember that encode URI component or the component methods work only on the query string, while this normal URI methods, they work only on the URI or the part before your query string. So that's why we have 2 sets of methods. Both are different, and usually you use component guy, these ones, not this two. What else? So yeah, we have some events now. Okay, let me see what is the status for us now. We will do events tomorrow. I mean, it's a longer topic, we don't have that much time. In the meantime, we can do something called Ajax, which is good. So for Ajax, I won't use Splunker. So let's talk about Ajax then. So far the thing is, in the normal applications that we have, whenever we submit the form, the page refreshes, right? Or if we click on certain link or anchor tag, the page refreshes. So far these two are the only elements in your DOM which makes your page to refresh. And why page refreshes? Because, for example, I should be having some demo for me. So for example, these are all the anchor tags, right? So if I click it, not here, yeah. So I have this anchor tag, and that's why what the default meaning of this anchor tag is replace the last part of the URL with whatever you have here, right? So if I click it, or meaning this thing, your page is refreshing because you have changed the address bar or value in the address bar. So that's what happens if you use anchor tag. Now if you have some form and then you are not using Ajax, in this case you are using Ajax, but if you are not using Ajax, then if you submit the form, your page refreshes again, because on the form you have something called action attribute. So these are the two elements that requires your page to refresh if you don't handle them via Ajax, of course. So what is the problem with this page refresh? Well, for example, you want to click this, right? It should bring the one new entire page, but that entire page is doing nothing except changing some content here or there. That's it. But still you will be asking for full page to load, and that would require loading all this scripts, all these styles. The entire HTML will be parsed again, your styles will be applied, your entire scripts will be parsed and executed again, although they were already there in the previous page, but still it will do all this work again. Most of the times, well, that is not the best approach, because if you just trying to change this part or even entire page, I would say don't load the page after once you have already loaded. So just load your page once and then do all of your actions or connect to your servers via using Ajax. So that is how your Ajax is helpful in that case, because it will allow you to not to load the entire page, but just bring the content that is needed for this particular action. So for example, in this case, forget about WebSockets or anything, but for example, I just need to pass this text and I want to return, or I want to just display what I have written from there. That's it. So what I will use instead of refreshing the page, sending entire page to the server, or sending entire request to the server, then getting the entire page loaded again, do all kind of things, I can do one Ajax request and then say this, just change this much content. That's it. No effect on any page, actually on other page or the other content of the page. No change here. The only place which is changing is this. That's it. This box. This page is still there. It's not refreshing. The URL is still there. So this is the benefit of using Ajax. You are not overloading your page unnecessarily, or even your servers. So your server doesn't have to process too many things now. Otherwise, if you, let's say you are doing some form submission here, your entire page will load and new content will be updated depending on status on the server. So this is the drawback of your full page refresh. You are always kind of misusing the network bandwidth there, and to avoid it you use Ajax. So what is Ajax? So it's asynchronous JavaScript and XML. The XML part is no longer true. People or most of the developers now use JSON, so it should be something called of asynchronous JavaScript and JSON, but if you put X in some name, it's cool, right? So it's Ajax, still Ajax. It started with XML as the data exchange format, but now everybody uses JSON. Nobody has time for XML. So that's why JSON is important. It is used thoroughly inside Ajax. So data that you send or data that you receive from the server can be totally in the Ajax. Your JavaScript understand Ajax, you are good. Now, how to communicate over Ajax? Because of course you need some help from the browser, because you are trying to avoid the page refresh. So there should be some other mechanisms which can allow you to connect to your server and then send some requests, bring some data from the server. Now, of course, since you are not doing page refresh, there should be something in the browser, right? Some object in the JavaScript that you can use to create the request. So we will look into that one, the entire flow of Ajax. So before that, some statement like this, you can use Ajax so that you can send data and get response from the server asynchronously. And that's why the word asynchronous. The reason we will explain a little later, probably in the jQuery session, because it's more understood there when you see few things working properly. So it is of course asynchronous. The meaning or the overview that I will give you right now is just that your browser or your JavaScript code doesn't wait for the response. It will go on executing other things in your JavaScript. So of course once you create the request and send your request, your browser say, okay, forget about that request now, just carry on executing other things. Whenever that response comes, we will handle, but as of now just carry on executing other lines after the request. So that's why it is asynchronous. So of course you are not interfering with the display and behavior of the existing page, and that's why the request can be in some other thread kind of, you can assume. So that's why it will never affect your performance of the page. It will not refresh the page. You can still work while this request is going in the background. So something like this. So of course there is no lag because this is very fast, but if there was some lag in the request and the response that you receive, in the meantime you can carry on working on the page. You don't need to refresh the page or sit idle just to wait for the response. So that's how your Ajax can help. So let's see how or what does the browser provide you to make this request response mechanism successful. So you get something called XML HTTP request, or in short I call XHR, XML HTTP request, or the XHR object, which is available in your JavaScript. It has some few methods that you can use, and then using those methods you can connect to your server, get the response, process it, display it on the UI. That's what you will be doing in most cases. So let's talk about that coding for that matter. So of course you have to use JavaScript. Now Ajax is one of the most notorious concept or having issues with the cross-browser thing. So of course you may be having some implementation in Chrome, some other implementation in case of your Firefox, or other one in your IE, and in case of IE as well there are few different cases as well. So that's why you have to write some boilerplate code just to support all of the browsers, and that's why in some cases you will work with XHR object. In case of few IE you will work with ActiveX object, which are same, but again they are Microsoft proprietary objects, but they are same as XHR, but of course the object constructor is different, so you have to take care of all these things. So instead of just depending on one, because if you use XHR object you will be supporting only these browsers. If you want to support IE5 and 6, well in that case you have to support this guy as well. So what we do for the best practices in case of Ajax, if you are trying to implement Ajax using plain JavaScript, usually rarely people will do it because there are libraries like jQuery, or every other library has some mechanism for Ajax which is very much or which is better than this plain JavaScript one, but you have to understand how Ajax works using the plain JavaScript. So what we do first, we create one HTTP request object, or just some variable actually. Then we say, okay, is XML HTTP request available on this window? So of course it will be available in Mozilla, Safari, Chrome, everybody. So just initialize your HTTP request variable using the new XML HTTP request, because this is available here. Then if this is not available, then check for ActiveX object. This is always true in case of IE or the little older version of IE. So in that case you will use try-catch. Why? Because in IE there are two flavors of ActiveX object. One is MS XML2 XML HTTP, the other one is Microsoft XML HTTP. So depending on that you somehow get a reference to one of the XML HTTP request or ActiveX object. So that's the code that you want to write to support multiple browsers and their different weird objects. But and at the end you will at least be having XHR requests, any implementation, but yeah, you will be having access to a HTTP request object. Now methods defined on these objects are same, only problem is this naming. So depending on the browser it can have different name, and of course for that purpose you have to create, or you have to write this much code to check for all different browsers. So this is the first step. We have created the XHR object. Now the next step would be to send the request, right? So to send the request to the server. So now you need to know what is the server URL, or where to send request actually, where is the server, and then what parameter to send to the server if at all you want to send some parameter. So the next phase is of course to use this object HTTP request and then use its methods and then send an AJAX request to the server. So in this thing, or in this process, so the second step, sending a request, we use the send, so open and the send method. So in case of when we use open, we are specifying few things, and it has 3 parameters. So the open has 3 parameters: the method, the URL, and a boolean saying do you want it to be asynchronous. So default it should always be true. So the method, well, you are asking what type of method is this HTTP method, whether it is get or post or put or delete, different things. So here you say okay, just get, and then you paste the URL, whatever URL you want to connect to or you want to send this AJAX request to. So you paste that URL, and since it is a GET request, all the parameters that you want to the server would be in the query string as part of the URL itself. So since it is there, you don't send anything here. You can just make it empty or pass null in the send one. So here you are configuring what to send and what type of request is this, and if this is asynchronous or not. So you use the open method for that, and then when you are done with that, you say okay, send the request now, which is of the type get, and to this server with all these parameters. So that's done. That's your AJAX request sending thing. You have sent the request to the server. Now server has to respond after some time, and then you will get the response again on this HTTP request, because this is the guy who is keeping track of the connection between the browser and the server now. So now it is done. What you will be doing is you will be processing the response. You will be waiting for the response and then processing it using some more methods on HTTP request. But before going into the response one, let's see about the other one, the post as well. So in case of get, you send the parameters in the URL itself. But in case of post, these parameters are sent as part of the body, which is here. So let's see in case why do we use actually post in that case. So of course get requests cannot be used to send large data. Mostly some browser as well as some servers has a limit of I think 4,000 characters. So if you try to send your get request with more than those characters, for example your parameter values are too much long, then in that case you should avoid using get request. And then also not even in get, in post as well. So if you send the parameters here or the values like this, you have to encode it properly, and that applies to post as well, not just get. So we have already seen how to encode the values of the parameter using encode URI component method, right? So we can use it here as well. Doesn't matter whether it's get or post. So if it is a post request, then we have to do 2 different things. The first one is of course to change the type method type to post. Your URL will not have any parameter now, it will be just plain URL. Asynchronous is still true. Now the next thing is you have to set the content type in the header using the HTTP request, and you say some string which is application / form URL encoded blah blah blah. Now what is this string? So far before even AJAX, whenever you are submitting some form, so let's say your login form, right? You are submitting, you don't know single page application or AJAX. So what you will be doing, you will be putting action attribute on the form level and then submitting the form. The form will change the URL, put that action on the address bar, and then it will refresh the page. So in that case, the server were expecting for so long, all these years, this type of content type from that form that you submit on the UI, and the values are sent to the server. So the content type of that form is like this. Now since you are making no changes on the server, you are just having your AJAX request now, instead of a total page refresh, you have to set the same content type here as well in the AJAX request. So you set the MIME type or the content type, which is same as your normal form submission, and then since it is a post, all the parameters that you want will not be in the URL, will be in the request body. So this is what we have done. Name of the parameter, value of the parameter, some more parameter, and then in this case I have tried to use the encode URI, and then some more parameter values combination. So of course this time your send will not be empty, it will have some parameter value combinations, and again this is a post request. So until now we have learned how to send a GET request and then how to send a post request as well. Now sending request is done. Now your HTTP request object will wait for some server response. So server will process, of course, this request, will prepare the response and start sending to you again. So how to process that request or that response actually when it comes from the server? So for that we have an event on this object, HTTP request event. On this HTTP request object we have the event which is on ready state change, and that event will invoke multiple times whenever your object is waiting for the response from the server. So it will wait there, and then of course you have to pass one event handler. We'll talk about event handlers tomorrow, but still this is nothing but this is the event, just like your click event or mouse move or mouse over event, those kind of thing. And then you are saying whenever this event is triggering, call this function. And where is this function? Here. Okay, so again what you can do is, this is one global function here. You say you wait for a particular state on that object, because there are multiple states actually, 1 2 0 1 2 3 4. So you wait for the last state. I will explain what is the meaning of each state, but you wait for the last one. When you find out that this is the last state, which is ready state equals to 4, you just check the status of the response, whether it was 200. You can take the response coming from the server, do whatever you want. That's all on to you. If the state is not 4, then don't do anything. Probably the response is not ready from the server side. So that is your response handler, and that's it. You have sent the request either via GET or POST, and you have received the response, and here you are processing the response and then doing some things. So we will try having a demo for this thing now of one by one, and then we will understand some more things. So what do I have? So we have this Ajax page, which is nothing but one simple button and then one title or one span tag. That's it. So what we want is whenever we click on this button, there should be some Ajax request to the server, and then bring back the content or the response from the server and display it here in this target. That's what we want, without refreshing the page, but just using Ajax. I should be having some Ajax file or Ajax JavaScript, I believe. Yep, I do have. And let's remove this entire file and code it from scratch. So we have this. I don't need jQuery because we are trying to write using plain JavaScript. So of course nothing, some style, some navigation, one section having one button, and one empty JavaScript as of now, which is this. So let's see, what do we have here? So if you see, we have just one button and one title. What we are trying to do is, when we click this, we will go to our server, refer or get some data displayed here without refreshing the page, without changing anything. So let's see what we're gonna bring from the server. So I should be having something. Yep, I have something called dummy JSON. So since this is one static web server, so I don't have a full-fledged web server running as of now. What I will do, I will request this JSON file from the server using Ajax, and then bring this JSON file, and then process it, and then display, let's say, this title, something else here. So since it will just kind of mimic like you have some sort of Java server or some server at the backend, and it will return you this JSON somehow. We will see how to create the JSON on the server side in our Java sessions, probably on Tuesday and Monday or something. But right now I'm just gonna fetch this static file from the server side using Ajax. So let's start coding for the Ajax. What we want first is to create the XHR object, right? Or even before that, I always go with this IFE. That's my first thing. We have gone through with the IFE, right, before. Why it is useful? Well, even if I declare some local variable here or some variable here, they will be local first of all. I don't have to name the function and it will be executed right away. So I'm good with everything. So this is the Ajax that we have. Not the Ajax, just the initial function, and every entire code will be inside here. Now let's go to the slides. So first of all, we have to create the XML HTTP request object, right? How to create? We already have the code for this, like this, and I have already explained the code. Something happened to my prettify. Anyways, I have to do it manually then. So this is the HTTP request object, and depending on the browser, so we will somehow get a reference to the HTTP request, or we will initialize HTTP request object either via XML HTTP request, ActiveX object, or two different flavors of ActiveX request object. In the case of Chrome, of course, this is sufficient. Nothing else is required. So at this line, we have initialize HTTP request. Now what we will do is we will connect to our server, right? We will have to send one request to the server. So we have this send to request thing. So I'm just gonna use these two lines, open and send. So what I'm gonna do is HTTP request.open, I want to have get request, and then here I'm just gonna reference to, or if I will bring this dummy JSON from the server. So where is my app running? Here. And then just give the path of this file that I want from the server side. That's it. This file, if you open on the browser, assuming that you are running local 8080 everything, it will be somewhere here, right? This file, that's what you want, but of course using an Ajax request. So we have said, okay, that's what we want, and since it is a GET request, I don't want to send anything, I'm good. So okay, until now, good. We have sent a request, sent a request to the server, and then we want to handle the response. So right, when we send something to the server will respond us with some content. So we want to wait for this event to trigger, and then whenever it triggers, we want to set the response handler for that one as well. So of course we will just have this as well, and of course you can always use the relative URLs as well here in this case. So something like this will also be fine, because this page, or you are requesting from demo, and in that case you can just you can just say what is required after demo. So something like this would be correct. Now we have sent a request so far. We have created the object, and now we are waiting for the response. Whenever server respond us back, we will just execute, or browser will execute this response handler function for us, depending on the trigger event, or this event trigger. Now, as I said, we will wait for a particular state to be equals to 4, and then whenever it is 4, we check the status of the response. So if you see, all the response that we make to the server, all the requests that we make to the server have some sort of response. So for example, if I refresh this page, you see this status equals 200, 200. So in general, 200 is equals to everything is okay. The server has responded with the status code 200 okay. In some cases you may find 404, which is error 404 if something is not available on the server. If something goes wrong with the server, you will usually see internal server error 500. So different things. So we are just waiting for the status equals to 200. That's it. So if everything is good, responses is received, just check the response status, assuming it's 200, and then forget about these two things. Whatever response we receive from the server or the data that we receive from the server is in this property of HTTP request, which is called the response text. And what we are doing as of now, whenever we bring the response, just log it on the console. That's it, nothing else. And that's what you have to do to make an AJAX request work. So let's refresh this page. So of course there was no error. Oh, okay, because I didn't wait for this button to be clicked because there is no event handler, right? Since we haven't gone through event handler, what I will do is I will put this into some set timeout, this entire code, and then call that function after, let's say, 5 seconds or so. Make AJAX request or something. So I have this function. I will put this entire thing into here. So this is entirely into this function. So of course it will not execute until I call this function. I don't want to call it when the page loads. I want to call it after some time so that we know the difference between the normal refresh like this versus the AJAX one. So let's call this function after some time. Just pass it to reference and let's say 5 seconds. After 5 seconds, make a request to the server and then wait for that request or response to be returned and then process it. That's what we want. So I'm gonna refresh. So as soon as I refresh, all this usual stuff will be there. We will clean it and wait for the response from the server. So just clean all this. So after 5 seconds there will be request. So yep, that was a request, one AJAX request. It was sent to the server. You can look it here and then you can see it went there. It was a GET request and we have received the responses from the server. Now you can go to the response tag, and since we have requested what, JSON, you will see the content type of the received data is JSON. So you can go to response and you will see, okay, we got the JSON from the server. Now you got it from the server, so of course it is available here in http.response text. So, and we are logging it here, right? So it should be somewhere here in the logger. Yep, we have it. But you see, this is a string as of now, because as soon as you receive some data from the server, it is always in the string format. That's what you have it here. Now this is a JSON, which is very good thing, but this is not that useful. You cannot traverse on the property as long as this is in the string. So right now there is no use of the string. So how to convert a JSON string into the JSON object or JavaScript object? Well, you just use the JSON parser, right? JSON.parse, and then pass that string that you have received from there, like this. I'm gonna remove the console.log for that. So what we did, we have used the JSON.parse to convert that JSON string that we have received, this one, into a JavaScript object so that we can traverse in this object using the properties. So we have converted into one object. Let's go to the, well, let's now log the object itself, not just a string. So let's do it, refresh the page, get rid of the content. After 5 seconds there will be request, should be here we go. We have received the response from the server, and instead of string now we have the object, because we have asked, or we have used JSON.parse on that string. So now it is an object. You can expand it because it's a proper object. We can traverse through all the properties, which is good, all different things. So this is proper object now. Now what we want to do is, if we want to go to a particular property, So let's say we have some property here, this one, this property, and then we want to display this something else into our container or somewhere here on the target inside here. So whenever request comes from the server or response comes from the server, it will automatically display something here. So we can do it. So we have already passed the object, right? We just want to go to this value. So how can you reach to this value? Well, you are here right now. You have to go to glossary, because it's again one object, and then glossdiv, again some object, dot title. That's how long you have to go inside this object to reach something else. So we can say, okay, let's just log it first. Object dot glossary dot gloss, I don't know, what was that? Glossdiv dot title. So I'm just logging it right now, console.log. So instead of logging entire object, we will just log whatever we need. That's it. Let's refresh the page. After some second, there will be one automatic request, Ajax request. So of course the page will not refresh. Nothing happened, right? The UI didn't even know it that something was happening. And then we have this something else here in the log, because what we did, we got the JSON string, passed that JSON string into one JavaScript object, and since it's a JavaScript object, we can use the dot notation to reach to a particular property in the JSON object, and we can display it. Right now what we want is, we want to put this content or this text inside this span, right, with the ID this. Well, we already know how to do that. I think we know how to get access to that span first. So let's say get element by ID, right, because it does have one ID, so we can get its target, and then we can use the inner HTML and then just put this data there. That's it. We don't even have to log it now. So that's what you have to do. We have made a request to the server for this particular file, which is a GET request. Then we wait for server to respond. Whenever the response is there and the ready state is this, and if the status is 200, we process the JSON string that we have, convert into a JavaScript object, and then traverse to a particular property that we want to display, and then we display it here. So that's what we did using Ajax. So of course we can do that. After 5 seconds there will be request, and whenever the response comes, we'll just put something else here, which is of course what we have asked it to do. So yep, that's your Ajax. Right now, since we didn't go through event handling, so I didn't use or make use of this click for Ajax. In that case, whenever you click, only then your Ajax request will be sent to the server and the response will be received. But right now, since we didn't do that, I'm just mimicking the same via a set timeout, meaning after some time. That's what I did. So click it, refresh the page. After some time there will be a request. It will receive the response, and then of course you will see the data in the title. So that's your Ajax example. Very basic one, but again you have to understand what are different phases or different steps to perform Ajax request. So of course there are 3 phases: to create the object, to send the request, and to process the response. Any doubt in this one? Otherwise tomorrow we will talk about different status or states of the ready state, and then what happens when there is a communication error, how to handle caching issues on the browser, and then of course very important topic, cross domain issues. We'll see if we can make a call from our app to any other domain or any other server in the world. We will see that if we can do that. So, and then of course we will talk about solutions as well. So different things. Okay, so let me know if you have any doubt in the basic part of the Ajax that we have gone through today. Otherwise we will start tomorrow from here. We will finish Ajax first and then we will go back to complete our events. It shouldn't take more than an hour in total actually, and then we will be finishing our JavaScript tomorrow. Okay, any other doubt? And probably on Sunday we will have some change in the timings, so of course it will not be at 3:30, but tomorrow of course it will be at 3:30. Who will watch third place match? So, but again on Sunday we will have, or I will let you know about the timing on the Sunday. Should I keep it in the night or in the same time like 6:30, or should I do it in the morning? It will be just 2.5 hour or 2 hour session, that's it. I'm not sure how many of you are on the West Coast. So is there anyone who is on the PST time zone or even MST? California, Washington. Okay, there are few many on the PST. So I cannot keep something like, of course, 12 o'clock, right? It will be 9 o'clock on Sundays. That would be too much. So how about 7 o'clock in the evening? Assuming it goes to penalty shootout. Okay, so I think the match starts at 3, unlike at 4. So we'll start at 6:30. Okay, just the usual timing on Sunday as well, 6:30 to 8:30 Eastern time. Okay, so adjust according to your usual timing or usual time zones. So tomorrow your class is at 3:30. On Sunday your class is at 6:30, and all timings are in Eastern time zone. Okay, so oh yeah, today is your submission for your project. So submit it on time. Yeah, okay. I mean, submit it according to your time zone, 12 o'clock your time zone. Okay, so PST guys has 3 extra time, 3 hours extra. Anyways, just submit it. Anyways, I won't see until the morning, so submit it. Anyways, submit by 6 o'clock in the morning. I don't care. You have 12 more hours to submit. But yeah, do work on that one. This is not some university project that you have to submit on time. Otherwise, you will lose grades or something. I am very flexible in that case. So just submit, work hard, submit probably by tomorrow morning. So whenever I look first thing in the morning, at least your code should be available there, or your project should be available there. If you want to make some changes right now, even if you have submitted it as of now, you can make changes and submit it again. I will always take the last one or last submission. I don't care you make 30 submission before. I don't even care. So I will just take the last submission. Just carry on or put on submission as many as you want here. There was one question, I think, how to submit the file or something. It was there some time ago at the start of the session. So just find me in this direct messages whenever it opens. Yeah, so somewhere I will be here in this direct messages. Go there, for example this guy, and just open this bar, and there will be something called upload a file. So yep, you can upload a file something like this or this, and then make sure that you work, and then you submit it by tomorrow morning. Okay, thanks everyone. Let's talk tomorrow at 3:30 Eastern. Bye bye.